Expansive and Unscripted. I'm Jennifer. My pronouns are she and they, and I'm super excited to be here talking with Caitlin Fisher today. Their pronouns are they and them. They are a writer, a coach, a creative, a neurokin, so many amazing things. We have been connected online and friends online. You know how that goes? Like, I don't exactly know the timeline because what is time? But I'm like, oh, we're like old friends.
I know, right? I'm
And
like, Jennifer, I've been following them forever.
yeah, so I'm excited to share this space and conversation. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. And I love the name Expansive and Unscripted because I'm like, oh, I know exactly what it is. I just have to show up. This is amazing.
Yes, yes. And you also have a podcast too, the Neurodivergent Pod,
I have, yes, the Neurodivergent Creative Podcast.
creative podcast.
And then I have a group membership community, which is called the Neurodivergent Creative Pod. So that's on Facebook and more recently Discord. And it's totally free, but we also have like a $7 a month tier membership part where you can like have all of the replays of like all my workshops,
Oh,
because some
nice.
people like to binge and some people like to just show up when they want to show up. So there's two options.
Yeah. So, how often do you get to be on like other people's talk shows?
So that's a great question, because the answer is as often as I remember that that's a thing I can do. So like at the beginning of last year, I made a spreadsheet and I was like, I'm gonna do like 2 podcast interviews a month, and it's for marketing. And then eventually, like, I don't know, I stopped. And then this year I was like, we're doing it again, but I lowered my standards a little bit. So I just want to do like, I want to be on one podcast a month because I have cool
Mhm.
things to say. And there's cool
Yes.
people in my sphere who have cool shows that I could totally be on. And I'm like, this is great. We both win.
Yes. Yes. Because I know, I mean, I experienced this when I was working as a therapist. There are just times where I'm like, I just want someone to ask me a question. I
Yeah.
want it to be my turn. So I know
Yes.
sometimes with hosting, it can feel like that. Like, I want to be on the other side of the mic because I have stuff to say that's not just like facilitating, the other person's conversation.
Yeah. I love that. I have always loved answering questions about myself.
Mhm.
And like, that was a thing where when I was a child, I look back and I'm like, oh, the signs. The signs were there. Because I would be like, I don't know how to make friends. Like, here's a list of 10 questions. Why don't you just ask me some, and then I'll ask you some, and then we'll be friends. And I'm like, oh, honey, that's not how people do it.
And I'm like, why not? That makes so much sense.
Right. It's like a freaking application. Like,
Hmm.
if I could screen friendships without having to like put my likability on the line, because I don't know,
Hmm.
that just sucks to be like, okay, I'm here in person with this person that I want to be friends with, and then like they say something totally heinous that I could have caught on a form.
Right.
It saved me the drive.
Oh my gosh, let's do it. Like, hey, you seem cool. Here's my Google friend form. If you could
Yeah.
just like fill that out and then we can connect on socials and then maybe have like a virtual chat.
Yeah. Well, I actually did make a PowerPoint on how to love me.
I love that.
Me too. This was in my uh starting to unmask phase where I was like,
Mhm.
I'm so tired of like having to like explain and like beg for people to appreciate me the way I want to be appreciated, and like yada yada. So I was just like, here's all my love languages. Here's some blogs that I've written. This is like required reading for my trauma, just get you up to speed right away.
Mhm.
And I literally am just like, here's how to talk to me. And that is like the most autistic thing. It's like when I have a dog sitter, I make them a whole binder of like, here's everything
Mhm.
about the dog. So why would I not do that for me also? I'm like, here's my favorite treats. Here's what I love to do.
And I think, I mean, same. I think this is brilliant, and this is how I wish relationships worked. Like since the beginning of my consciousness, I'm always like, I don't understand why are we not just like saying things
Yeah.
directly. So this, I don't know, need for, I think sometimes when I would like bring that up, people would be like, oh, but the mystery. I'm like, I want mystery about like fun stuff. I don't want mystery about how to connect with you or how to communicate
Yeah.
with you. Or
Like
like,
fundamental relationship needs, that shouldn't be a
yes,
mystery. We shouldn't have to go
right.
spelunking for like, do you prefer to text or talk in person about conflicts? Like that's basic.
Right. And how much time would it save and like frustration and disagreements would it save to just cut that out and be like, all right, let's swap our files. I've been thinking about that a lot, like in the workplace too. And I'm working on developing an app that is going to help facilitate that essentially. Like, here's kind of the how to work with me file.
I love
Because
that.
there's so many things that we don't talk about before we get into like, okay, we have this team project we have to work on, and nobody knows anybody's communication style and anybody's, learning style. And then it just ends up being this big cluster. And it's frustrating when it doesn't have to be.
This is reminding me at my last like corporate job that I had before I fucked off and started my own business. Oh, also, can I swear on your show?
Yes, I
Okay.
mean,
I
it's
can
fine
keep
by
it.
me. I don't know if the socials like censor it, but
Okay. I'm like I can keep it PG. But I was apparently the social glue of our department, and I would plan like activities for us, including one day I had everyone take the Enneagram test, and then I had like spreadsheets and like worksheets on how like these three people in our office are threes, and this is how you should give feedback to
mm,
threes, and this person's a two, and this person's a six. And I was like, this will make everything easier. And for the people who like took to that, like me, and like some of my coworkers, they were like, this is great. It's like a manual for like how to talk to our manager.
mhm.
But like the manager himself was like, oh, what a cool, fun day that we had. Anyway, I'm going to go back to like not reading your emails. And I'm like, okay. So it's like we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make it drink.
Right. And it is so confounding to me when the response is like, but it's going to take extra work. And yet they do extra work
To get
in
mad.
the right to get mad, to have misunderstandings, to go back and forth with like 1600 emails, and then finally like just face to face and like sort it out
Yeah.
in 2 seconds. Yeah. So I want to go back to the you fucking off from corporate,
Yes.
and and I want to hear a little bit about that journey, like as you escaped that and came into entrepreneurship.
Great. Okay. So, I had been fairly unhappy and burned out for several months. And so like I knew that I was on the precipice of a journey out of this job, but I was applying to other corporate jobs. And then we had a sort of like shit hit the fan moment, and I gave myself a deadline, and I was like, by June 30th, I am giving my notice whether or not I have another job. And I applied to 80 jobs in a month. That was so many. And there were some where I would catch afterward that I had like copy and pasted from like another cover letter, and so it had like the wrong company name. And I even wrote back once and I was like, hey, thanks for your rejection. Love that feedback. Was it because I copy and pasted badly? And he was like, no, I swear. So I really appreciated that. And also my audacity to ask because, I don't know,
Yes.
I don't mind it. I don't mind asking. Um, and I didn't have anything lined up, like nothing full time. And so on June 30th, which was my deadline, I had a call with my boss and I was like, hey, so I will be leaving the company. And I gave them 4 weeks notice. One, because I don't like leaving people in the lurch. And two, because I wanted all them paychecks. So
Yeah.
like I wanted a couple more paychecks. And then like they had to
Valid.
pay out my vacation and everything. So I had like a decent nest egg by the time I was just kind of floating. Um, so my last day was like July 27th or something like that, end of July. And they threw me a little party. It was adorable. And a coworker who actually loved me was like in charge of the decorations and stuff. So it was really cute and on brand for me. And my boss was like, "We will miss Caitlin. Caitlin wrote lots of good content. Bye, Caitlin." And I'm like, "You suck at this."
Wow.
Way to make a girl asterisk feel appreciated, you know? Um, and then I did end up finding a freelance position, like a part-time contract role with a nonprofit. And that was where I was headed, is I wanted to get into nonprofit communications. But then I was also working on my own coaching stuff and started coaching writers. I didn't plan to coach writers, but they came to me and I was like, that makes sense. I've written a book. And people who have like been my Facebook friends for the 2 to 5 years prior to me leaving this job had witnessed me leave an abusive marriage and start eating disorder recovery. So I had a lot of people who were like just really proud of me and like were there for the journey. And so when I was also like, P.S., I'm coaching people, the people who reached out and wanted to be coached were people who had a journey like mine. And they were like, well, I want to write. And I've been through some hard stuff and I connect with you. And I'm like, oh, a niche. And then I have just continued to be like, oh, a niche, like the whole time. And now my niche is like neurodivergent, queer, chronically ill, disabled writers who want to write a novel. And I'm like, you would think that that's like 4 people. No, millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
I only have 1,500 Instagram followers, but I'm sure that there's millions of us. And it's like, I don't even want to reach millions. Like one of my like mantras is you inspire thousands, because thousands is comfortable for me. I feel like I can make a living inspiring thousands. Inspiring millions is getting a little vomity.
Yeah.
Like, that's too many.
That's a lot. That's a lot of visibility.
It's just so many people. It is. The visibility is hard because you get people commenting about, especially when I talk about eating disorder recovery, I get people who just make the most inappropriate body comments. And it's like, it's hard out here for a fat person in eating disorder recovery because people don't believe that, like, if you're fat, you can have an eating disorder, because they're like, well, where's your eating disorder? I can't see it. Why aren't you tiny? And I'm like, yeah, well, I asked my metabolism and he told you to shut up and leave me alone.
Goodness. It's such a challenge. I mean, there's so many things swirling around my brain in response to that. I love how you talk about like the niches, just like they appear. And I've had that similar experience. And like you said, it's like this tiny little sliver.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people in that sliver.
Yes.
That are, and I think the slivers that we gravitate toward, the niches, are people who are already like overlooked for many programs. And so like it's hard for them / us, because I know you and I both share a lot of identities with the folks that we work with as well. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, somebody's specialty is like me? What? Like, yes. I'm not just like an add-on. Well, like also you can come too. But it's
right.
Like, especially in the coaching world, I feel like it's becoming more prominent now, like, especially with ADHD coaches. But I think in general, like, coaches who have an understanding of like kind of the vast intersections of neurodivergence, and also the co-occurring chronic illness, disability elements, and the relationship of these identities to each other, along with additional historically excluded identities. Like it's a whole thing. And there are not as many like practitioners who are intentional about the intersectionality of that and understanding um this like everything is not the client's fault, right? Like if certain things don't work out, I think that is a lot of common like mainstream coach messaging. Like if it didn't work for you, then you didn't work the program, whatever the program is. Like if you didn't reach the revenue goal or the weight goal or the followers goal, whatever, it's your fault. Heaven forbid it be like maybe the system doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah, that actually informed how I put together my writing incubator, because I was like, how long would I want this to be? Like if the sort of transformational promise that's not a promise because I can't make you do things, but the goal of the program is that you will write your first draft. And I'm like, well, how long does it take to write a first draft? And I looked at my own writing, which I started a practice that I call Novel Day, which is that I work on my novel on Wednesday mornings because that works for my neurodivergence. It doesn't have the perfectionism of writing every single day, so that if I miss a day, I'm like, well, I may as well go live in the woods, because it's so easy to do that. I'm like, well, missed a day, I can't. I've literally done skincare every night since January 1st, 2023. And I'm like, I fear a night that I skip washing my face. Will I never wash my face again? I have no idea. But I couldn't do that with writing. So I just write on Wednesdays, and I'm expanding that now. I'm trying to write on Wednesdays and Saturdays. But I wrote my first draft in about 11 months, writing once a week. And so I made my writing incubator a year long.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be some times where you're like, I'm really on the ball, I'm really writing, la, la, la. And then there's going to be some times where your brain is just like, no, you can't today. Or you're tired, or you get sick, or your kid is sick, or there's a big deadline at work and you just can't. Like there's so much life happening, and I want to help people write their books in a way that fits into their life. And so for me, and the offer that I wanted to make those people is a year. Like it's a year of coaching. Come back. It's always here for you. That's the hard part then, because then we get like the rejection sensitivity where they're like, I haven't showed up in 2 weeks, so I may as well never show up again. And I'm like, no, you paid for it. Come back in here. Quit it. You're making me look bad. But it's so complicated, and it's so emotional, and it's like such a process of allowing your bare minimum to be good enough. I'm very big on reclaiming the bare minimum. I'm like, no, like we set a tiny goal. And so some of my writers, their goals are open the Google Drive, look at the folder with my draft in it, do that every day. So all I got to do. If they do that, they can choose to do more or to be done.
Yes.
And I love that for them.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And it's so like spacious too. I think
I use that word, spacious. It is a spacious container.
Yes.
And it, I did an in-person retreat last year, and it was the most neurodiversity affirming in-person thing anyone there had ever experienced. We were all like constantly on the verge of tears at like feeling so accepted and at home, and like just laughter would erupt somewhere in the house, and people were comfortable stimming and interrupting and just like building on the story, and nobody got mad because there's like no neurotypical weird subtext to navigate. Everybody there was neurodivergent in some way, and it was life-changing. I'm like, I got to do another one. But I learned to charge more for a retreat. I did not charge enough for a retreat.
I feel like most people learn that lesson the first whatever it is. It's like, oh, okay.
First couple times.
But it sounds like you as a facilitator also had the experience of belongingness in your own space because of like the saturated neurodivergence.
Yeah.
And that's something that I experience too in my programs. Like I'm constantly telling people like I'm excited for, our next event thing because it is nourishing to me. It doesn't feel like work in this space because as a neurodivergent leader, facilitator, I too can show up and be stimmy. I too can be like, I'm not really having a camera on day. Like, is that cool with everybody? And I am not seen as less professional. I'm not seen as less competent. All these things that have those connotations in neuronormative spaces.
Yeah, I've experienced that as well. I would say that I become friends with most of my clients if they don't become my client after having been my friend. A lot of overlap between the professional
Mhm.
and the friendship with me because it's such like I'm a very affirming coach. Like
Mhm.
I care about my clients. I want to know what's going on in their life. And like it's better. It's better over
Mhm.
here in this part of the world where I get to like know people on a human level and they know me too. And like we have an evening call once a week as opposed to a morning call on the other day of the week because I have some people in the UK and so it's easier for them to attend my 10 a.m. call, which is their middle of the day.
Mhm.
Um, One of them's a night owl though, so she tends to come to both. She's like, I'm up till 2 a.m. anyway, so this is fine. And I'm like, all right, you live your life.
Yeah.
But I'm going to interrupt myself because I have ADHD. Two people flew from England to come to my retreat. Like that's the amazing pull
That's
of
amazing. Yes.
being in a space with other neurodivergent people. And like, holy crap, that was a process for me to be like, oh, this is that cool. This is that important that people are like buying plane tickets to come here. Like they need
Yes.
passports to access me and they're like, ah. So that was a little bit of a moment for me.
Yes.
And I kind of forget what I was already talking about, which is fine.
Yeah. I was so wrapped up in all the things you were saying. I can't give you like a here's what you were talking about.
Oh, I remembered.
Yeah.
It's that on my evening call, my meds tend
Mm.
to like run out. And so I'll start being like, what was I saying? Like I just did here. And they're very forgiving and they just help me get back to it. The biggest challenge has been like keeping all of our ADHD corralled
Mhm.
because I'm like, I want you to. It's like when I walk my dog. Like I want her to be able to sniff things. Like that's
Mhm.
how she gets mental exercise. So like I want I want us to be able to talk about stuff. We know a lot about zeppelins. We've learned
Mhm.
a lot about zeppelins and about stage production and about
Mhm.
like 12th century fashion. There's just a lot that we're
It's
learning.
amazing.
So we just go on little
Mhm.
tangents. And I love that. But then at some point I have to be like, cool, so we're going to bring it back to
Yeah.
writing. And nobody's ever mad at me. And everybody's
Mhm.
like, you're correct. This is a writing call. And it's just nice. We can just sort of like, it's like a ball pit. I can be like, we're going to bring the
Yeah.
balls over here.
Just meander around.
Yeah.
Well, and something that I'm hearing in all the threads of your different programs is there's an emphasis on community. Like maybe you do one-on-one, but there's also like community containers for that. And I think that's another element of like your working title program that not only is it the year of support with you, but it's a year of building community with other writers.
Yes.
And that is like, that's always this amazing side effect of communal programs that it's like this is really hard to quantify and I can't guarantee that you're going to make friends, but like I've been doing this long enough to know that there's a really strong possibility you're going to connect meaningfully with the other people there. And
Mhm.
yet there's also, I mean, for many of us, we have been burned by group experiences, having been unidentified neurodivergent folks in spaces where we've been shut down or ostracized or something. So I also understand the tentativeness with which like newer neurodivergent people, like newer to us, are like, I don't know about group stuff.
That's totally fair. I think like my neurodivergent creative pod, that's around like 800 people right now. And as that grows, I'm a little worried because then you tend to get sort of like we're outside of this, it started with a circle of my friends and then like they invited their friends and then like I mention it in other neurodivergent groups. And so it's like we're getting outside of the realm of like where I have kind of influence over the type of people joining. And I'm like, you could be neurodivergent and say racist stuff and then I got to kick you out. I don't like kicking people out, but like you're out. And that part of like the larger realm of people, my thousands that I'm inspiring, some of those thousands are not going to be for me and I'm not going to be for them. And that does get like a little scary because I want all of my people who are for me and like for whom I am for them. Pretend that was English.
Yeah.
I'm a professional writer. I want them to feel safe and protected and connected.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
just managing larger spaces like that gets a little nerve-wracking. But I now have a mod team. Because
Oh
turns
yeah,
out
I was just
I was allowed to ask for help. Yeah, that one took me a very long time. I've had this group for like 3 years and didn't ask for help for like until the last 3-4 months. And like 12 people were like, of course I'll help you. And so now I have mods and I have like team or special interest captains, I call them. So we
oh
have
my gosh, I love that.
like fiber arts special interest because it's the neurodivergent creative pod. There's lots of ways to be creative. So we have a writing circle, we have a book club, we have video gaming special interests. And I have people who have been following me and in my spaces for years who like at the chance to help were like, absolutely, I will help you run this group and build this community. And I was like, I was so overwhelmed.
Yes.
Because I have a very strong belief that people should be paid for their labor. And like I can't afford to pay 12 Facebook group moderators, and so I didn't want to ask for that help because how do I compensate? And then realizing that like this is part of their giving back to a community that has given them a lot of support, kind of overwhelmed me and made me realize that I've been really committed to making comfortable neuro-inclusive communities and that people are happy to help maintain them. And I was just like,
Yes.
oh, okay.
Yes. I love that. And I appreciate you mentioning the piece about compensation because that's something that I'm mindful about too, especially again when we go back to these like intersections of identity that are often overlooked for compensation, are called on like spill your heart out on stage and be an inspiration, but we're not going to pay you, it's just
Right.
exposure. So I appreciate you sharing that because that is a challenge. I don't want like the last thing in the world I ever want to be is exploitative, and
Right.
yet there are times when people are just like waiting for opportunities to give back or to contribute or like maybe they're like I can't pay for this tier but I can give you some time and energy to do some of this, and that's a way that there could be like reciprocity.
Yeah. Yes. We're building a neurodivergent labor co-op.
Tell
Which,
me more.
yeah, it's like a time bank if you're familiar with a time bank. But the
Yeah.
problem with a time bank is that like say I do something really easy. I'm like, I can body double with you on a call and I body double with 5 people on calls doing things I was already going to do. And now I have like 5 time dollars and I can be like, can somebody come over and paint my house and pay with my 5 time dollars for an hour? And then we're getting into like, well, what is the value of my hour versus your hour? And so it's a non-currency this is not an economy. This is literally, you post a task. If somebody can do that task, they will do a task. And then they post a task, and somebody does their task, and then they post a task. And it's just sort of like, take a penny, leave a penny, but for the impossible task for our ADHD, where it's just like, I just need to find a provider in my network. But going through all of those websites really stresses me out, because here is my insurance. Can you just Google psychiatrists in Akron, Ohio, who take this insurance? Somebody can totally do that, and it's not going to be a problem for them. And then that person gets to call and be like, can you please cancel my gym membership?
Yes.
Right?
I love it. So
and
good.
It's like, I used to do resumes, like professionally and on a freelance basis, and I don't really take them anymore because they're not money makers, like compared to my coaching. And coaching is where I want to be focusing my energy on, like what I'm selling. So I don't want to market. I do resumes. I'll do it for $50. No, but if somebody's in the co-op and they're like, I need a resume, like, bam, got you. Absolutely, I'm going to do that resume. And then I get to be like, can somebody turn this video into 3 reels of me saying something that sounds really smart? You know? Because I don't like sitting in the video editor and clipping them and adding the captions and blah, blah, blah. Because we all have so much skill. And then it's so much easier to do something for somebody else than for yourself.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And we're building in like an inherent, it's kind of a seesaw, where it's like, if you have done 3 tasks, you can't ask for more than 6 tasks. Like, you can't go over 3 more than you've done. But also, if you've done 3, you have to like post 3. Like, you have to stay within 3 in either direction. So we don't get people pleasing. People who are like, I've done 20 tasks this month, and my own to-do list is in the dirt because it's less important than yours, and I'm just here to do tasks for you. So there's none of that. And then there's also, like, you can't hoard stuff that, like, nobody's going to owe you anything here. This is all based on mutual support and ability. And so we're beta testing it right now. Still looking for volunteers who want to try it out and help me identify the kinks. And this will be part of that $7 a month tier of the Neurodivergent Creative Pod, because it's like, I'm going to host it on like an online community site that's like password protected, so that it's not like vetted. Like, it's not like people have to like pass any type of security measure or whatever. So like, don't share your passwords on here, but like, they can call your gym and be like, Kelly's canceling her gym membership. Thanks.
Yeah.
You know, so please don't share your passwords. PSA.
Yes. I love that. So if somebody was interested in participating in your beta test, how would they get into that?
I have an interest form, actually, which I can link in all of the stuff that I link when this broadcast is up and at 'em.
Awesome.
And I'll make sure that you have that link. You send out an email, I know, because I get your emails. So I can also share that link with you, and I would love if you sent it out. I'm still looking for like maybe 5 or 10 volunteers.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure like all your contact links are attached to this.
We're both
event.
having a great day being like, that's not how you pronounce the start of that word.
Yeah. My brain really loves to switch words in the middle of words, which is just such an adventure. But that's also part of like the unscriptedness. Like I want, like, I love having these conversations. I want the world to know amazing things that we're doing, and also to see us in kind of maybe a little bit less masked state of being, talking to each other and recognize this is how we show up. And one of the things you shared with me kind of before this conversation is just the whole thing, and we touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious to explore it a little bit more about just the perceptions. You know, you're an entrepreneur, you're a published author, you're a coach, and you know, there are times where like we forget words or how to pronounce things, right?
Yeah.
And there's a challenge there in like wanting to be taken seriously for our craft, for our expertise, for you know these fields that we've been in, and then also bucking up against like the stigmas and assumptions of people in society. And so I just kind of want to open that part of the conversation around, yeah, just navigating like your unmasking process as you continue to build your business and continue to grow the thousands of people that you are inspiring.
That is a great question, which is code for I'm thinking about my answer.
I love
Um,
it.
but I've been doing some work on like how I perceive me versus how my clients perceive me, because they obviously are investing in like services from me. They view me as a professional person and they trust my advice. That's awesome. So I'm like, okay. So for them to see that a person that they trust and a person that they have hired to help them accomplish their goals makes mistakes and messes up words in the middle of a sentence, for me, that normalizes that it's fine when they do it too. Like, I have found typos in Stephen King books, you know? Sometimes there's a typo. And the more you sort of deconstruct masking and the idea of professionalism, which is like white Christian supremacy, heterosexual patriarchy, uh, like
Yep.
so like the ideal person is a very strict moral Christian heterosexual white guy who is thin and fit and perfectly able-bodied. And the further you divest from the idea that that is the pinnacle of professionalism, the more you're just like, who cares? We all die. Like, like I don't need to be perfect. I say like all the time. I hate it. I know it sounds like I'm a teenager, and yet it is there with me. And when I first started my podcast, I would clip out like my breathing. I'm like, they can't know I breathe. They can't know I inhale. Oh my God, they're not going to take me seriously. Nope. I eventually got to a point where I would just leave that in. I would cut out like some big ums where I was like, and like totally lost my train of thought. I would reel that in a little. But now I have a podcast production team who you introduced me to. Thank you so much. Pancake Copycats. Shout out. Please hire
Whoop,
them.
whoop.
Rest until they are fully booked and turning
We love
away.
them.
Like, I cannot handle the level of better my life is with that team, like producing my podcast and like my marketing, and holy crap. There was a time I was going to be like late on a payment and I was like, I can pay this on the 1st. And if you need it on the 30th, I will send you my last $500 from my bank account. And Kitty was like, it can wait till the 1st. It can wait till the 8th if you really need to. And I was like, oh, to be seen. But no, I paid early and I was so
It's
excited because
amazing.
I got a payment from a client and I was like, God, I can pay my copycats because I love them.
Yes.
And I want to hire them to do more. And so that's just a shout out to another amazing neurodivergent business owner.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And yeah, we the more your business is successful and you're able to hire other neurodivergent businesses and providers, like it just goes with that collective liberation, collective thriving
Yes.
thing that is just so like counter white soupness.
Yeah, it is. And like, I think so, if I saw another queer, non binary, disabled, abuse survivor who like had a banner year and broke all the records that they had ever made in their business, I would be like, oh my God, look at you go. I'm so happy. And therefore, I must also do that for myself because I am a queer, non-binary, disabled abuse survivor who doubled my business revenue last year. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do with this? Right. And some people came in and they were like, this is too privileged for me. And I'm like, okay, well, you got to go because like we're all winning. We're all winning. More queer people winning, please. More non-binary people winning. More disabled people. More abuse survivors winning. Let's win.
Yes. Yes. It's about more people winning,
More
not
people.
everybody not winning. Like that's
Yeah.
not my well, it's not my vision of like a liberated, equitable future. It's like no, we all have abundance.
Right. Like we all
That
have
gets
abundance as opposed to the sort of like we must all suffer until there is collective liberation. And I'm like, I think we can like liberate ourselves because I used to not like brag on myself. I used to not celebrate myself. I used to not believe that I could inspire thousands, let alone those vomity millions who maybe one day, like I want to do a TEDx talk. That's terrifying. But I keep talking about it, so that means it's going to happen eventually. But like,
oh yeah,
there's so much that like I have done to deconstruct all of those white supremacist patriarchal systems that keep me from supporting myself and other people like me. And I'm like, no, I'm here to help weird people write books. That's what I do.
Yes. And it's like what is it? Like concentric waves rippling out, right? Like
Yeah.
when we practice the things that liberate ourselves individually, then we are able to show up in liberatory practice with others. Like if I don't believe that I am worthy, I can't as effectively show up to help others believe in their bones, their worthiness.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, the work starts with me, any of us individually. And once we are in practice of that, it ripples out because, like you said, you're showing a model, you give an example of it is safe to make mistakes here. So,
Yeah,
as
it's
I'm
safe to make
talking
mistakes.
about,
It's safe to win also. Like it's safe to celebrate.
mm-hmm,
People are like, "Oh, I don't want to brag. I don't want to do this. Please brag." Like I am
mm-hmm,
yes, we're winning. Like tell me what's good.
yes,
Tell me what's good
yeah,
because I can go find bad news all day very easily. Like I also like good
yes,
news. And I I am a soft hugs person. And I like that about myself. And I have done a lot of work to like that about myself and defend that about myself.
mm,
Because some people like want you to be harder. They want you to be tougher. They want you to like, no, we all need to do better collectively. We must be doing more for like these important causes and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I get that, but I'm also the person who is going to come by and be like, what you are doing is enough. And it's okay that you're not
mm-hmm,
burning out on it. And that's
mm-hmm,
just a kind of a frustrating place to be because like I think of myself as like and my approach to creativity as revolutionary. Like it is
mm-hmm,
revolutionary to just make art because you like it in a society that says if that's not profitable, you shouldn't be wasting your time on it.
exactly.
And like just doing stuff because you love it is revolutionary in this societal mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's not guillotines, but like it's a start to shifting a culture and reprioritizing passion and creativity, which are inherent in our childhoods, and then get beaten out of us so that we can just be cookie cutter people. No cookie cutter people. I like weird
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm. Well, it has to start somewhere. Like
Yeah.
there, it doesn't like movements start and grow. It's not like phew, all of a sudden everybody is doing the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why I talk about like my corner of the internet. Like,
Yes.
my little, me and my 1,500 Instagram followers are dancing around in crop tops while fat, you know?
Woo! I know I talk about my little like queer neurodivergent anti-racist neighborhood on LinkedIn. Because it has been surprisingly lovely there.
I think I want to
And
start doing more on LinkedIn. I think it could be really nice for me because like I'm very used to Facebook. Instagram's fine. But like perhaps on LinkedIn I could be making like more impactful waves with the same messages.
mm-hmm.
You know, like that's how I kind of
Yeah.
think because LinkedIn has started so like buttoned up and corporate. So for me to come in and be like, "Hello, I'm colorful," is
Yes.
that's already going to be a little outside the box. And I'm like, "Well, great. Good.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Calling in my weirdos on LinkedIn."
Woo!
Woo.
So I would love to invite you to take a moment to celebrate here. You have some exciting things coming up and coming out.
Yes.
Tell us about them.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier, Working Title is my 12-month writing incubator to help you finish your first draft in a year, with time to run away to the woods and then come back. That is enrolling in March, between like March 5th and 19th, I think, is like my cart open period there. And to sort of warm up to that, I'm doing a 5-day free novel outlining challenge called Novel Parkour.
Ooh.
Novel Parkour. And I named it Parkour because it's literally going to be like, oh, well, what do I put between this scene and this scene? And I'm like, I don't know. What's the shortest distance you can jump? You find like a foothold over there. Parkour. Just fill it in. First draft only needs to be about 30% good. Don't be precious. We're not being perfectionist here. And I'm like, who is this great for? People with ADHD. Because if I'm like, I don't know, how could the queen do this thing? Oh, I got 17 ideas. It's just like a bag of marbles. And you just take a marble and follow it and be like, I have an outline for my story. Good. Chaos. We're doing it. So that is Novel Parkour, and it starts March 1st.
Amazing.
Super
Amazing.
exciting.
Awesome. Yes. And I think you just like recently revamped your website.
I did. I revamped two websites.
Awesome.
And here's how I explained it to my web designer, because she was getting so confused. She's like, I'm making a website, but you also have this other, are there two? And I'm like, okay, the one that you're designing, which is CaitlinLizFisher.com, is my house, my studio, my place where I'm doing stuff. And then AskFishFisher.com is the place where I'm selling stuff and I'm going to work and I'm being an expert. And when I put it like that, like this one's my living room and this one's my storefront in the town square, she was like, oh, I get that. So those are my two websites. Caitlin Liz Fisher is where you can learn all things about me. Follow my blog, read my writing. It's like where I'm getting back into writing for myself versus for SEO, because that got boring and was no dopamine. So I just quit writing my blog. And I'm like, oh, this will not do because I'm a writer and I have to write or I'll die. I'm like a shark.
Yeah.
And then we have Ask Fish Fisher, where I'm starting an advice column called Ask Fish Fisher. Or Ask Fish, technically. But Ask Fish was not available on namecheap.com, where I buy my domains. So
you got to get creative and dive into that bag of marbles.
Yeah, and my friend Ashton always sends me mail addressed to Fish Fisher. So I got really used to just being like, that's my cute name. Like, they picked me up from the airport and the thing said fish. Like, they made a little card that said fish. And it was precious. So I'm Fish now.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So super exciting. People can listen to your podcast. They can read your blog. They can sign up for Working Title and Novel Parkour ahead of that to get like warmed up and muscles. Yes. Are there any, like, can folks of any genre writing join, or is
Yes.
it like only for certain
No. Okay.
genres?
So this is actually like a really important question, and I'm glad that you asked it. And that was not code for I'm thinking of my answer, because I have an answer, which is that most of us are writing novels. When I say most, it is definitely not all. So we also have like a memoir in the style of a stage play.
Mm,
And we have a memoir that is also a cookbook. And starting in March, I believe I have another cooking memoir author joining us. So we do have a lot of like memoir-y nonfic. And then within the fiction genres we have some like post-apocalyptic fantasy, but it's like set in an alternate reality of the United States Rust Belt. So it pulls heavily from like industry. And then there's also like knights, and it's very like gender bendy on like the tropes. So like
amazing.
we have a strong lady knight, like Brienne of Tarth vibes, and like kind of a daintier like dude who falls into the sort of damsel role, and it's the chemistry is amazing.
Amazing.
We have a historical fiction about Constance, Princess of Antioch, who like her Wikipedia page is about this long. And this author has managed to create like a compelling romance novel that ends with
Amazing.
a LGBTQ twist, because we love to see it. Yes. We have some like thriller, like psychological thriller. There's so much. There's something for everybody. We don't currently have any like gory horror. And I'm not great with gory horror. Oh, we have like a succubus monster fucker book. That's gonna be very fun. There's a lot going on in here.
I love it.
Yeah,
Well, and like what a cool draw. I'm like, I wanna hear all of those stories.
I know.
So like, can I
It's
just
like
sign up and like
it's like
listen
an
and maybe I won't?
awesome book club where you get to read books before
Right.
they're published and
How cool is that?
help create them. It's so you've heard of beta readers, right?
Mhm.
Which is like where you send out your manuscript and like get some kind of like final feedback on it. This is considered alpha reading, which is like the first level of like, please read my rough draft and help me form it. So
Yes.
the critique available in here is like honestly like career changing. Like if you want to be a writer, getting peer review and like critique of your work is the fastest way to become a better writer and like tell a better story.
Mhm.
And the first couple times that people submit to critique, it's like scary. They're like, I don't know, I'm scared. And as Evan puts it, one of our writers, he's like, we're basically handing our baby to someone else and being like, here is my baby. Don't hurt my baby. And so there's sort of this like mutual understanding that like nobody's going to be a dick in here because these are
Mhm.
babies. We're all holding a baby.
Yes.
And it's like the most tender loving space. And so like even when something like we read it and we're like, I don't really like this part, like nobody's ever mean. So
Mm.
that's because I think that's a big part of it is like the fear of critique and like rejection
Oh
sensitivity.
yeah.
It's a very rejection sensitive friendly space.
I love that.
It's
Yeah, because
it's
there
hard
are
to do,
groups
I
that
think.
are like
I'm gonna brag
cutthroat.
about that. It's really cool in here.
Good. Brag
Yeah.
about it. I know, like, I've sent your info to a bunch of writers, and I'm like, please go to Caitlin, go to Working Title. It's going to be amazing. So now they can hear from you
Yeah,
yourself about how amazing it
for
is.
sure. Yeah. And I can send you like some extra stuff if you are happy and willing to send it out to your email list. I would love to give you a bit
Absolutely.
more like beefed up material.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's been amazing talking with you today. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time and energy and just sharing bits of yourself with the world.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun. This was like one of my favorite interviews.
Yay!
We got to just throw marbles on the floor and follow them.
Yes. I love it. Awesome. All right, folks, we'll tune in again for another episode on another Thursday morning. We'll see you there.